Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Riley Only Reads Books About Games because getting out of your comfort zone is for nerds! And today we'll be talking about the Spells, Swords, and Stealth book series, and the difference between subverting expectations and pulling random stuff out your butt. So, general basics so we're all on the same page. Subverting expectations is when you, the writer, do something that the reader did not expect, thus surprising and intriguing them. Pulling something out of your ass is when you do something the reader doesn't suspect by doing something they wouldn't have even thought was a possibility. As a general rule, the products of your butt are not something that a reader wants to find on the pages of the book they just bought, nor in the hard drive of their computers. So let's try to make the difference a bit clearer for the sake of those poor readers out there. So why bring spells, swords, and stealth into this? Because using a story to explain a concept is a running theme on this channel, and I like how it handles things, so there. Besides, I like to give my viewers some reading/listening/playing material to look at after the video if they're interested. In the first SSAS book, we're introduced immediately to the kind of adventuring party that makes me hate almost all books about tabletop role-playing. The token douches, who need role-playing as a way to live out their violence and cruelty fantasies. Do these players exist in real life? Sure. Do they comprise a large section of the tabletop community? Not in my experience. But you know how it is, vocal minorities and all that. The party goes around adventuring for a while, don't worry, it's a very short while, before finding their way into a tavern occupied by 2 humans, a half-orc, and a deformed gnome. They try to threaten the bartender, but the voice of reason in their party calms them down to the point that they just get some drinks. Classic adventure, very nice. The party then immediately wipes upon drinking the beer due to some poison they ate unknowingly earlier, leaving their corpses in the bar. In the real world, secondary character sheets are pulled and the group of adventurers start anew. Nothing lost to them but a quest item in their inventory that they can acquire in the world fairly easily if they try. No one is really inconvenienced by the wipe too much. Or so you think. Somewhere in another world, a half-orc, 2 humans, and a deformed gnome are freaking the fuck out about the 4 corpses lying face first on the table in the half-orc's bar. Technically, the beer the half-orc served them did kill them, but only because alcohol was the missing ingredient from the poison they ate. Knowing that the Mad King that rules their land will likely raze their village to the ground if he finds out some adventurers and his employee died here, they decide to loot the equipment from the dead adventurers, bury their bodies, and take their place to save their home. Naturally, the human woman, daughter of nobility and the most formally educated of the lot, takes up the role of wizard. The town guard, who's the most used to armor, takes up the role of paladin. The half-orc, being a half-orc, takes up the role of barbarian. The crooked gnome, being the smallest and good at throwing daggers, takes up the role of rogue. And they all set out to adventure and save their hometown. They all suck and are immediately defeated by a small party of goblins and are taken hostage. So that's the subversion of expectations, right? The party was supposed to be all cool and suited to their new roles, but they all suck? Nope, that's not even a surprise at this point. If you've been paying attention at least. See, Eric, the guard, has made it clear that while he is trained at it and practices every day, he sucks at moving in heavy armor. He isn't very good in a straight fight either, and he only still has that job because he's friends with the mayor's daughter. The mayor's daughter, Gabby, while the most formally educated, isn't exactly taking to her spellbook very well. Oh, she's banging her head on it for all she's worth, but she just isn't really made for thinking analytically like that. You soon learn that all those many times she's been kidnapped by goblins, she's actually made pretty good friends with most of them, to the point that she's allowed to hunt and go on adventures with them, as long as she puts on a good enough sad face when the adventurers show up to save her. The half-orc, Grumph, lacks the internal rage one needs to be a barbarian. You see this from the moment the adventurers wandered into his bar and started making trouble. He's more calculating than that. His anger is a tightly controlled and well-regulated thing that he doesn't need fear or repress, because he has the mastery and self-control to trust himself with it. The gnome, Thistle, isn't even slightly suited for the role of rogue. He can barely keep pace with the polio-ridden unvaccinated child. The only parts of his body that really work right are his brain, his eyes, and his hands. He can't sneak, he can't scale walls, he can't sprint, or really do any of the things a rogue needs to do their job. He's smart as a whip, but that can only get one so far on a quest. Now, the more perceptive members of my audience, or those cheaters who've already read the books, have likely guessed what happens next. It's actually a fairly common trope. The party switches roles, so all the members look ass backwards. When the pretty, blonde mayor's daughter sees her goblin friends getting slaughtered during a surprise demon outbreak in the goblin camp, she snaps, like a twig, under the boot of a pregnant orc, grabs a nearby convenient axe, and starts hacking limbs off things. The guard, having been stripped of his armor after being caught by the goblins, decides he doesn't feel safe engaging in open combat and tries to sneak around the burning huts, getting surprise jabs in with his sword. He finds all those years in armor have strengthened his limbs, and he's actually really good at moving quickly and quietly. The spellbook they'd confiscated from Gabby had landed near Grumph in all the chaos, and with no weapons nearby, he picks it up and starts reading, desperate for some means of getting out of this and saving his allies. He finds his years of working in a tavern and brewing his own meads has left him a mind well suited to the memorization of details like subtle movements and ingredient lists, and the first 2 spells in the book come fairly naturally to him. The gnome manages to find himself with a pair of mismatched daggers, but it looks for all the world like he's shit out of luck. Without any other recourse, he grips a dagger, whispers a prayer to the god of minions, then throws it. Well, the god of minions, Grumble, is more used to getting prayers along the lines of, "Don't let the adventurers find me," or "Don't let Master beat me tonight." A prayer for strength, a prayer to help one stand up and protect their friends, well, that's one a god like him can't help but pay attention to, so he grants it. So now we have a pretty blonde barbarian, a huge stoic half-orc wizard, a crippled little gnome paladin, and a rogue who couldn't cut it as a guard. I can hear you scoff now. What's so special about that? Various stories trying to ape Tolkien but pretending not to have done that all the time. It's entry-level stuff. The reason I bring this example in is that Sasaeus does it so well. These characters aren't just dropped on our heads. We aren't given a, "Ooh, look at this pretty girl, she's a barbarian. Whoa. And she's better at fighting than the men in her party? Oh!" Yeah, none of that here. Instead, we're given a person. A person who, from the first time you meet her, is clearly at odds with herself. Someone living a double life, trapped between noble high society and adventuring in the woods with her goblin friends. A person whose parents love her very much, but want her to be this prim and proper lady that she just isn't. All of this isn't even exposition dumped, it's laid out in her character, her actions, and the way she handles things. That, my dear viewer, is the difference between subverting your reader's expectations and spoon-feeding them butt nuggets. Setup, consistency, patience. The subversion has to be something that you're given reason to suspect can actually happen. A really skilled or prolific reader may even guess what's going to happen beforehand. I sure did when reading this book, but that didn't reduce my surprise and enjoyment from reading it. If Johnny Jinglenuts is in a story about, say, a murder investigation, then somehow gains the magical ability to track murderers through multiple timelines despite time travel not having even been mentioned earlier than 3 paragraphs ago, we have some high-density butt nuggets here. If your audience can't, on a second read-through of the story, see a moment where the eventual outcome was hinted at, they're going to feel somewhere between cheated and lied to, possibly both. Alright, that's about all I have to say for this episode, guys. You should really go read the books, and as usual, I'll be including a link to where you can buy this one on the Amazon bookstore in the description. Tell them I sent you. Neither of us is likely to get anything out of it, but hey, the author, Drew Hayes, may decide to sponsor a second video on the books. I plan to make another one either way, this one about my thoughts on the intra-party character relationships, but that's next time. It's been a lot of fun making this video. I love you nerds, and y'all have a lovely day. He can barely keep pace with a polio-ridden unvaccinated child. Child? Did I really write child there? He can barely keep pace with a polio-ridden unvaccinated child. He can barely keep pace with a polio-ridden unvaccinated child.